I was sitting on the floor of the kitchen, staring at the microwave clock blinking 2:47 a.m. The house was silent, too silent, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. My hands smelled like cheap coffee, the half-empty cup still rolling slightly on the tile where I had dropped it hours ago. I hadn't moved. I couldn't. I felt like if I shifted even an inch, everything around me would collapse. Across the room, her purse sat half open on the counter. Red leather. New. A brand I didn't recognize. It wasn't hers. Or at least, it wasn't when I knew who she used to be. I don't even remember standing up, but there I was, walking toward it like a man hypnotized. I didn't plan to go through it. It just sort of happened, the way you might reach to catch something falling off a table without thinking. Inside were the usual things: lipstick, wallet, keys, and then a hotel card. Not just any hotel. One of those places that tries too hard to seem high-end, but everyone knows what it's really used for. Room 428. The date printed on the back, yesterday. I didn't feel anger yet. Anger would have made sense. Anger would have been clean, like fire. This was something heavier, like concrete filling my lungs. I pressed my forehead against the fridge door, cold and humming beneath my skin, and tried to breathe. The front door creaked open. She was home. Her heels clicked once on the entryway tiles, then stopped. She stood there, framed by the door like a painting that had gone crooked, head tilted, eyes sharp even through the darkness. "You're up," she said, her voice smooth, bored, like it was perfectly normal for her to come home in the middle of the night with perfume clinging to her that I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. I didn't move. She kicked her heels off carelessly, one landing sideways, the other spinning slightly before falling flat. She dropped her bag on the floor, not even noticing that it was already open, that I already knew. Then, as if nothing had happened, she sauntered to the fridge, leaned against it so close our shoulders almost touched, and pulled out a water bottle. She didn't ask where the kids were. She didn't ask why I was up. She just drank, slow, deliberate gulps, eyes never leaving mine. "What?" she said, finally, lips wet, tone clipped. I opened my mouth, but no words came. I just held up the hotel card. She smiled. Not the way a guilty person would smile. The way a wolf might when it realizes the trap was set too late. "Oh," she said, voice light, almost laughing that. She didn't explain. She didn't lie. She didn't beg. She walked past me, bumping my shoulder hard enough to make me stumble half a step, and threw herself onto the couch like a queen settling into her throne. "You done snooping?" she said, flipping through her phone like I was a bug crawling up the wall. The pressure inside my chest cracked something open, something I didn't even know was there. "I want the truth," I said. It sounded stupid even as I said it. Weak. Like asking a storm why it rains. She yawned. "Truth? You can't handle truth, Tyler. You want the version that makes you feel like a man. Not the real one." I felt like the ground was tilting under me. She tossed her phone down, sat up, and looked me dead in the eyes. "I stopped caring about you 2 years ago," she said, voice sharp enough to draw blood. "You were boring. Safe. Like marrying a fire extinguisher." She smiled again, wider this time, and twisted the knife. "I faked every kiss. Every moan. Every I love you. You were a convenience store husband. Quick. Easy. Forgettable." The words hit harder than any slap could have. I stepped back, bumping into the counter, knocking over a glass that shattered at my feet. She didn't even flinch. "Go ahead," she said. "Throw a tantrum. Cry. Call your mommy. I don't care." And she meant it. She meant every word. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized the woman sitting on that couch wasn't my wife. She never had been. I was married to a ghost I invented because the real her had been dead inside a long time. And somehow, impossibly, standing there barefoot in a kitchen full of broken glass, I smiled back, because I knew something she didn't. Tomorrow morning, she would wake up to find an empty house. No clothes, no pictures, no notes, nothing. She would be alone in the ruins she built, and she wouldn't even care. But I would be free. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't pack carefully. I didn't even think about it. I just moved, grabbing what I needed, stuffing it into the back of my car, the tires whispering over the asphalt as I slipped out of the neighborhood like a thief. No one saw me leave. I didn't want witnesses. I didn't want one last conversation where she'd spin new lies, twisting my head around until I doubted what I already knew. I had been doubting myself for too long. That was over now. 3 towns away, at a gas station that smelled like burnt coffee and rain, I parked and just sat there. I watched the sky lighten from black to blue. Watched the trucks rumble in and out. Watched people with somewhere to be and people running from places they never wanted to see again. People like me. The sun was almost up when my phone started buzzing on the passenger seat. Her name on the screen. Again. And again. First the missed calls. Then the texts. Where are you? Come back. You're overreacting. And then, don't do something you'll regret. That one made me laugh out loud, a harsh, broken sound that startled the woman getting into the car next to mine. I threw the phone out the window. Not in a rage. Not dramatically. Just, let it go. Like dropping a stone you don't want to carry anymore. The gas station clerk watched me with wary eyes as I walked in, grabbed a black coffee, paid in crumpled bills. No small talk. No smiles. By noon, I was sitting in a crappy motel room 2 states away, staring at the ceiling fan wobbling dangerously above my bed. I could still hear her voice in my head, taunting me, laughing, the cruelty sharp enough to leave marks inside my skull. She was probably sitting in that house right now, sipping her stupid overpriced wine, telling herself that I'd come crawling back, that I was too soft to stay gone. And maybe she was right. Maybe I would have cracked if the knock on my motel door hadn't come first. I didn't expect anyone. I hadn't told anyone where I was. I froze, every muscle locking up, heart hammering so hard I could hear it. Another knock, firmer this time. I crept to the door, peered through the peephole. It wasn't her. It was some guy, late 20s maybe, lean, nervous, hair too neat like he was trying hard to look older. And he was holding something, an envelope. Against every shred of common sense screaming in my head, I opened the door just a crack. You Tyler? He asked, voice rough. I nodded slowly. He shoved the envelope into my hand like it was burning him, muttered, good luck, man, and bolted down the walkway, his sneakers slapping the concrete. I closed the door, locked every bolt, and stared at the envelope. No return address, just my name, printed in neat block letters. I tore it open with shaking fingers. Inside was a photo. Her, my wife, sitting in some dim bar, wearing the same dress she had on the night she came home drunk. Smiling, leaning way too close to a man whose hand was buried under the table, and judging by their faces, not just resting on her knee. There were more photos, different men, different nights. Some of them I recognized. Neighbors, friends, a coworker whose kid I coached in Little League. Every photo was a punch to the gut. But the last one was the knockout. It was her, in our bed, with someone I had trusted like a brother. And she was looking straight into the camera, smirking. She knew. This wasn't a mistake. This was a performance. And I was the only one who didn't know I was part of the audience. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, the photos slipping from my lap, floating to the floor like dead leaves. Somewhere between rage and heartbreak, a cold, perfect calm took hold of me. She wanted a show? She was about to get one. But it wouldn't be the one she was expecting. I didn't cry. I didn't smash anything. I just sat there, staring at the mess on the floor, feeling something new settle into my bones. Something steady. Something cold. I picked up the photos carefully, slid them back into the envelope, and tucked it into my bag. There was no plan yet, just a raw, electric certainty buzzing under my skin. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to beg. She had made her move, and now it was my turn. I checked out of the motel without a word, got back in my car, and drove. Not home, that place was just a shell now, but to somewhere familiar. Somewhere she wouldn't expect. My brother lived a couple of towns over. A rundown place he barely kept together, the kind of place she'd never set foot in unless she was paid to. He wasn't home. Good. I let myself in with the spare key he never bothered hiding and sat at his kitchen table, the fake wood laminate peeling under my fingertips. Planning. She kept our lives on a schedule. Same coffee shop every morning. Same overpriced gym every afternoon. Same wine bar with her fake friends every Thursday night, pretending to be better than every woman she was secretly stabbing in the back. I still remembered the passcode to her car. I still knew her calendar. She thought she was smart. Thought she was untouchable. She forgot who she married. That night, I watched from across the street as she pulled into the gym, her shiny white SUV gleaming under the cheap parking lot lights. She sat there for a second, fixing her hair in the mirror, texting someone with a smile so sweet it could have rotted teeth. She didn't even glance around. She was too sure of herself. Too wrapped up in the game she thought she was winning. I waited 10 minutes after she went inside. Walked calmly across the lot. No hoodie. No slinking around. Just a guy walking like he belonged there. Confidence makes you invisible. I opened her back door, slipped onto the floor behind the driver's seat, pulled it shut. Quiet. Smooth. And waited. The gym windows glowed gold across the lot, figures moving behind the glass, lifting weights, running in place, pretending they were fixing their lives. Inside that building, she was laughing. Flirting. Probably lining up her next target. My hands were steady. My breathing slow. 37 minutes later, she came back out, ponytail swinging, gym bag slung over one shoulder. Still texting. Still smiling. She climbed into the front seat, dumped her bag into the passenger seat without looking, started the engine. It wasn't until she pulled out of the lot and hit the first red light that she realized she wasn't alone. I leaned forward slowly, my voice calm, almost casual. "You miss me?" she shrieked, fumbling her phone, slamming both feet onto the brake, jolting the SUV hard enough to throw me against the seat. She twisted around, eyes wide, breathless. "You're insane," she gasped, voice shaking. "No," I said. "I'm awake. For the first time, really awake." She locked the doors with a frantic jab of her finger, like it would save her, like it would change anything. "You need to get out," she hissed, trying to sound firm. But her hands betrayed her, fluttering like scared birds. "Sure," I said. "Right after we talk." "I have nothing to say to you," she spat. "Good," I said. "Then listen." I dropped the envelope onto her lap. She glanced down, confusion flickering across her face. She opened it, and just like that, the color drained from her skin. The first photo, then the second, the third, each one dragging her a little deeper under the ice. "You think you're clever?" I said, voice low. "You think you're the first person to lie to me, to humiliate me?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, throat working. "But you're the last," I finished. She found her voice, sharp and ugly. "You're pathetic. You're stalking me now? Spying like some creep?" I leaned back, calm. "No, I'm documenting." "For what?" she snapped. "You'll see." She stared at me like she wanted to kill me. But fear was leaking into her anger now, twisting her face into something raw and unfamiliar. She didn't know what was coming, and that terrified her. Good. She deserved worse than fear. I leaned in, close enough to see the panic bloom in her eyes. "You built this mess," I whispered. "Now you get to live in it." I clicked the door lock open and slid out into the night. No shouting, no threats. Just a promise hanging between us, heavy as thunder. She sat frozen behind the wheel, clutching the photos like they were bleeding. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. She wasn't winning anymore. I drove with no destination. The night rolled past me, empty streets lit by dying street lamps, the highway humming under my tires like some old, broken lullaby. The air tasted different now, freer, heavier. Every few miles I caught myself laughing, short bitter bursts that startled even me. It wasn't happiness. It was the sound of a man who had finally stopped lying to himself. She was probably sitting in her car still, trying to figure out what the hell just happened, calculating, scheming. I could almost hear her voice in my head, spinning new versions of the story she'd tell to the world, painting herself the victim like she always did. But this time, no one would be there to listen. I had taken the last thing she thought she controlled, her image. And I wasn't done yet. Around 3 in the morning, I pulled into the lot of a 24-hour diner, the kind of place where no one asks questions if you look like hell. I slid into a booth, ordered black coffee, and started laying out the rest of my plan in my head. I wasn't going to destroy her. I was going to erase her. Step 1. Disappear so completely she couldn't use me as her scapegoat when everything came crashing down. Step 2, deliver the truth not to her, not to her friends, but to the few people who still thought she was worth something. The envelope wasn't for her. It was for them. The neighbor who used to look at me with pity. The coworker who once warned me she was too good for me. The family members who invited us to dinners, never knowing she was laughing at them behind their backs. They would all see it now. See her without the mask. I left the diner just as the first light started cracking through the sky, the kind of pale, ugly dawn that makes everything look worse. I drove back into town, careful, methodical. First stop, her parents' house. I slipped the envelope into their mailbox, taped a note on the front. Ask her about room 428. No signature. No explanation. Just the truth, waiting like a landmine. Second stop, the office where she worked. Same deal. Envelope taped to the glass front door. Her name scrawled across it in thick black ink. Final stop, the bar where she spent most of her nights pretending to be someone special. This time I went inside. The bartender, a tired-looking guy in a wrinkled black shirt, barely glanced at me as I crossed the room and pinned the last envelope to the corkboard where they usually posted open mic flyers and lost dog notices. Someone would find it. They always did. By the time I walked out, my hands were steady, my mind clear. I wasn't running anymore. I was burying the past shovel by shovel. As I reached my car, my burner phone, the one I bought right after leaving, buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. For a second, I almost let it go. Then curiosity got the better of me. I answered. Silence. Then a voice, hers brittle, sharp, cutting through the static. You think this is over? She said, low and furious. You think you can just vanish and make me look bad? She was unraveling. I could hear it in every word. The cool, controlled monster was gone. This was something raw and feral. You owe me, she hissed. That's when it hit me, sharp and clean. She believed that. She actually believed I owed her something. After everything she had done, everything she had stolen. You're right, I said, smiling into the darkness. You're about to get exactly what you deserve. I hung up before she could answer, tossed the phone into a trash bin, and drove away without looking back. Not toward a new life. Not yet. First, there was one more thing left to burn. And this time, it would be her standing in the ashes. I didn't go into hiding. I just moved differently, quieter, smarter. I rented a room under a fake name in a half-dead town an hour away. A place where nobody cared who you were as long as you paid cash. Meanwhile, the fires I'd lit started to spread. The first crack came 3 days later. It started small. A post on social media. A vague, trembling little thing from one of her so-called best friends. Something about people not being who they seem and betrayal coming from inside the circle. I saw it because I had a dummy account set up just to watch. I leaned back in the hard plastic chair of my rented room and smiled as I scrolled. The photos I left behind were working faster than I'd even hoped. By the 5th day, it wasn't just vague posts anymore. It was full-on accusations. Her name tagged, her face shared, screenshots of old texts leaking, showing just how deep the rot went. And the best part? I didn't lift a finger. She was destroying herself trying to put out the fires, stamping on one flame while 3 more popped up behind her. Friends were blocking her. Co-workers were whispering. Even her parents, the ones who used to defend her like attack dogs, stopped answering her calls because they had seen what I left them. I didn't have to wonder how she was taking it. I knew her too well. She wouldn't be crying. She wouldn't be apologizing. She would be raging. She would be plotting. She would be looking for something, someone to blame. And she would come for me. That was fine. I was ready. On the 8th night, it happened. A knock at my door. Soft at first, almost polite. I checked the peephole. It was her. Hair messy. Makeup smudged. Wearing a jacket I had never seen before. Probably belonged to one of the poor idiots she latched onto when I slipped away. She was clutching her phone like it was a weapon. Her other hand curled into a fist against the door. I didn't open it. I let her stand there in the hallway under the flickering fluorescent lights, looking smaller by the second. She knocked again, louder, faster now. Tyler, she said, voice tight, controlled. The fake sweetness barely masking the fury underneath. I know you're in there. Come on. Let's be adults. I stayed silent. You made your point, okay? She said, leaning close to the door. You embarrassed me. Congratulations. You win. I almost laughed. She thought this was about winning. You're not perfect either, you know. She snapped suddenly, the mask slipping. You're just petty, weak, no apology, no regret, just more venom. Typical. She started pounding on the door now, each hit louder than the last, the sound echoing down the empty hallway. Come out, she shouted. Face me, you coward. I watched her through the peephole, calm, detached, like a scientist studying a dying star. Let her burn. After a while, she gave up. She sagged against the door for a moment, breathing hard, and then stumbled away down the hall, heels clicking unevenly. I waited until I heard her car screech out of the parking lot before I moved. I grabbed my bag, the second burner phone, my keys. It was time to vanish for real now. The storm I'd built had done its job. There was nothing left worth watching. But as I stepped out into the cold night, one last thought hit me, sharp and sudden. She wasn't going to just accept this. Not her. She would dig. She would crawl. She would bite. Because women like her didn't know how to lose. And somewhere, somehow, she would try to pull me back into the wreckage. But I was done playing her game. Next time she came looking for me, she wouldn't find the man she used to mock. She would find someone she didn't recognize. Someone she should have feared from the beginning. I drove until the roads blurred into black ribbons under the wheels. No destination. No plan. Just forward. I found a cheap room in another no-name town, the kind where the wallpaper peels and the ice machine hasn't worked since the Clinton administration. Paid cash. No ID. No questions. Settling in, I realized how quiet it was now. No messages. No accusations. No fake apologies. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was loaded like the air before a storm snaps the sky in half. I knew her too well. She wasn't done. 3 days later, the message came. Not a text. Not a call. She wasn't that obvious. It came through a third party, a mutual acquaintance I barely knew, someone who still hadn't figured out which side they were supposed to be on. A simple message, she's looking for you. And she's serious. No details. No threats. Just a warning. She had shifted gears. If she couldn't shame me, couldn't guilt me, she'd try something nastier. I could almost see her, pacing, scheming, trying to build a new trap out of the rubble ID left her with. She must have realized by now that her life back home was crumbling faster than she could patch it. And she needed a villain. Someone to blame for it all. Someone to destroy to make herself the victim again. I wasn't worried about her tantrums. I was worried about what she would do when she realized tantrums weren't enough. And sure enough, it came. Early morning, the knock on my door wasn't a knock at all, it was a pounding, like a hammer against the thin wood. I didn't look through the peephole this time. I didn't need to. I opened the door a crack. Not her. 2 police officers stood there. 1 male, 1 female. Uniforms sharp, faces blank. Mr. Tyler Monroe? The man asked. Yeah, I said, my voice flat, calm. We need to ask you some questions regarding allegations made against you by your wife. There it was. Her final move. She was trying to drag me into court, to bleed me dry, to destroy me legally since she couldn't do it any other way. I didn't flinch. I nodded, stepped aside, let them in. They sat, pulled out their little notebooks, started asking the usual routine. Where was I on the night of X? Did I have contact with her after the separation? Was there any history of domestic issues? Their tone was professional but cold. They were treating me like I was already guilty. That's what she was good at. Flipping the story before you even knew it was being written. I answered every question calmly, clearly. Gave them the burner phone records. Showed them the timestamps from my motel stays. I had built a firewall the night I left her. Because somewhere deep down I had always known she would turn rabid when she realized she couldn't win. The officers wrapped up after an hour, clearly seeing the cracks in her story but too professional to say it outright. They left with polite nods, thin smiles. And as the door clicked shut behind them, a new kind of rage bloomed in my chest, not hot and chaotic like before. This was cold. Surgical. She didn't just want to hurt me. She wanted to erase me. To turn me into a cautionary tale she could tell with tears in her eyes while flashing her perfect smile to the next fool who thought he could fix her. No, not this time. She thought she could play the long game. She didn't realize I was just getting started. It was time to turn the knife. Not out of anger, out of mercy, because the worst thing you can do to someone like her isn't fight. To show her how little she matters. And tomorrow, when the next stage of my plan hit her front doorstep, she would finally understand. I wasn't her enemy anymore. I was her ghost. And you can't kill a ghost. The morning after the cops left, I sat on the edge of the motel bed, the stiff mattress digging into my back, the cheap curtains letting in thin, gray light. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even bitter. I was precise. It was time to remove her last shelter. Her reputation with the people she still believed would stand by her when everything else was ashes. She thought the worst was over. That sending the police was her final move, that I would break down, beg, or lash out like every other man she had chewed up and spat out before me. She didn't understand yet. She hadn't even seen what real loss looked like. I pulled out the second part of the plan, the thing I had built quietly in the background while she was busy parading her new life around. A dossier, not just photos, not just texts, evidence. Financial records showing business trips paid for with stolen joint accounts. Screenshots of conversations where she bragged about manipulating judges, friends, even family members. Proof she had used my name, my credit, to fund parts of her new lifestyle. Names of men she had pulled into her games, some of whom were married, some in careers that wouldn't survive a scandal. It wasn't petty revenge. It was surgical destruction. I didn't send it to the police. I sent it to the bar association where her new boyfriend was a junior lawyer desperately climbing the ladder. I sent it to the HR department of her company's regional office. I sent it to the local business groups she had tried to worm her way into, pretending to be some entrepreneur-influencer hybrid. And for good measure, I sent it to her church group, the one where she played the part of the perfect wife so well people used to say we were an inspiration. It was over before noon. By 3 o'clock, her work email was suspended. By 5, there were posts from old friends distancing themselves quietly, like rats leaving a ship that was already half underwater. By nightfall, she was alone. Really, truly alone. No job. No safety net. No clean version of herself to show to the world. She had bet everything on her image. And I had shattered it with a few emails and the simple, undeniable truth. No screaming. No threats. No court dates. Just quiet, cold exposure. I turned off the burner phone after that. I didn't need to see her rage, her sobbing voicemails, her frantic apologies once the ground gave way under her feet. I didn't need to hear the lies she'd tell herself to survive the fallout. I wasn't part of her story anymore. I wasn't her villain, her victim, her prize. I was gone. And when she looked around, gasping for air, clawing at the walls she had built herself, there would be no one left to blame. Just the sound of her own voice echoing back at her from the ruins. That night, as I sat outside the crumbling motel on a busted plastic chair, watching the stars blink in the black sky, I realized something I hadn't been able to admit until now. I didn't hate her. Hate would have meant she still had a piece of me. She didn't. She was just a bad chapter in a book I was finally ready to close. And once closed, I would never open it again. I left the motel that night without ceremony. No note, no checkout. No goodbye to the sad-eyed clerk who barely looked up when I dropped the keys on the counter. I didn't want witnesses to this version of me. This was a shedding. The car hummed beneath me like a living thing, carrying me further and further from the ruins without a destination. I didn't need one. The only thing behind me was smoke. In the early morning, somewhere deep in a stretch of cracked highway flanked by dying cornfields, I pulled over. Just stopped the car on the side of the road, stepped out barefoot onto the cool asphalt, and stared into the blue-black sky. It was the first time in years I could breathe without the weight on my chest. Not the fake kind of breathing, the smile for the camera's breathing. Real, raw, full. The wind tore through me, stripping away pieces I didn't even realize I was still carrying. Her laughter, her lies, her cruelty disguised as affection. She was still out there, somewhere, screaming into the void she had made with her own hands. Maybe she was sitting in that empty house, smashing wine glasses against the walls. Maybe she was drafting long, tear-soaked messages to friends who wouldn't answer anymore. Maybe she was staring into a mirror, seeing herself for the first time without the layers of adoration she used to steal from people like oxygen. It didn't matter. None of it mattered anymore. And that was the real revenge. Not the dossier. Not the public humiliation. Not the dismantling of her little kingdom. The real victory was standing here, barefoot on an abandoned road, heart beating steady and quiet, knowing she didn't own a single piece of me. No rage. No sadness. Just release. I could have stayed there forever, letting the cold creep into my bones, but life doesn't wait for you to savor the silence. My phone buzzed, not the burner, the real one, the one she didn't know still existed. I checked it out of reflex. One message. Unknown number. You don't know me, but you need to hear something. I almost deleted it. Almost tossed the phone into the field and kept walking. But something about the phrasing, not desperate, not angry, made me pause. Another message came through before I could decide. It's about her. And it's worse than you think. A cold knot twisted in my gut, the first fear I had felt in days threading its way back into my blood. Because just when you think you've escaped the labyrinth, you hear the monster breathing right behind you. I stood there for a long time, staring at the blinking screen, the empty road stretching out in both directions, waiting for me to choose. Walk away forever. Or turn around for one last look into the fire. I clenched the phone in my hand, every instinct screaming at me to leave it, to move forward. But my thumb moved on its own, tapping open the message. And what I read made the blood drain from my face. It wasn't over. Not even close. She hadn't just been cheating. She hadn't just been lying. She had been setting up something much, much worse. Something that could still destroy everything if I didn't stop it. And somehow, impossibly, I realized she hadn't lost me yet. She had been planning her real move all along. And I had walked right into it. I didn't hesitate after reading that message. I climbed back into the car, engine still warm, heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. I didn't know who sent it, didn't even know if it was a trap, but I knew one thing without question: she wasn't finished. She had been patient. She had been building something ugly under the surface while I was busy celebrating my escape. The message had included an address. Not our old house. Somewhere new. A small rental house tucked in the cracked corner of a nearby dying town, half its windows boarded up, trash cans sagging out front like drunks on the curb. I parked a block away and approached on foot, the air sharp and bitter in my lungs. I kept to the shadows, instincts sharpening to a point. The house looked abandoned at first glance. No lights, no noise. But there was a car parked in the driveway. A black sedan with tinted windows, engine still ticking from recent use. I circled carefully, heart hammering. There, through a slit in the blinds, movement. Two figures. One pacing, fast and frantic. The other sitting, slumped low like they were being lectured or threatened. I couldn't see her face, but I didn't have to. It was her. The wild, jerky way she moved. The way her hands cut through the air like she was slicing invisible throats. It was her. I moved closer, pressing against the siding until I could catch fragments of sound through the cracked window. "Idiot!" she hissed, voice trembling not with fear but rage. "I told you to get rid of it. All of it. If he finds out, we're both screwed." A mumble from the second figure. A man. Couldn't make out his words. She shoved something at him. "Papers? A folder? I'm not going down for this." She spat. "You take the fall. You're disposable." He was never supposed to leave. Damn it. And that was the moment it all clicked together. She hadn't just cheated. She hadn't just lied. She had been setting me up, financially, legally, for months, maybe longer. Loans in my name. Fake signatures. Debt buried in accounts I didn't even know existed. And when it all imploded, I was supposed to be standing right next to her, drowning in the mess she created, while she slipped away clean. My leaving hadn't saved me. It had exposed her. And now she was scrambling, trying to plug the holes in a ship that was already halfway underwater. I should have walked away then. I should have turned, gotten back in my car, driven until the world behind me blurred into nothing. But I didn't. I stepped onto the porch and knocked once, hard. The talking inside froze. A heartbeat later, the door ripped open. And there she stood. Not the version she showed the world. Not the polished, smiling wife. This was the real her. Hair wild, makeup smeared, eyes wide and glittering with desperation. For a second, just a second, she looked almost relieved. Then her expression twisted into something dark and furious. "You," she breathed. I smiled, not kind, not angry. Just steady. "Me." The man inside stood up, panic written across every inch of him. He looked younger than me. Maybe by 10 years. Scared. Weak. Exactly her type. She pushed past me, stepping out onto the porch, slamming the door behind her with a force that rattled the windows. "You don't know what you're doing," she hissed, getting too close, crowding my space like she used to during fights when she needed to feel bigger. "I know exactly what I'm doing," I said, voice low, calm. Her hands curled into fists. "You ruin me, you ruin yourself," she snapped. "You think you're clean? You're tied to all of it. Walk away now, Tyler, and you might survive. Stay. And I swear it'll drag you down with me." I leaned in, close enough to see the fine cracks spiderwebbing through the mask she still wore. "You already did," I whispered. And then I stepped back, calm as stone, and said the words she never expected to hear. "It's not me you need to worry about." Confusion flickered across her face. Behind her, down the street, headlights snapped on. 2 black cars. Silent. Watching. My final play. The authorities she had tried to outrun. The ones already digging through the mountain of evidence I left like breadcrumbs were here. She turned, saw them, and for the first time since I met her, real fear twisted her face. Not anger. Not manipulation. Real naked fear. She spun back toward me, mouth opening. Maybe to scream, maybe to beg. But I was already walking away, my boots crunching gravel underfoot. I didn't look back as the officers closed in. Didn't flinch at the sound of her shouting, raging, breaking. It wasn't my story anymore. I had finally turned the last page. And I wasn't in her book anymore. The road stretched in front of me, long and indifferent, and I kept driving until the sky turned violet with the approaching night. I didn't feel victorious. There was no soundtrack swelling behind me, no parade waiting at the end. Just the hum of the tires on the asphalt and the quiet knowledge that I had survived something designed to break me. I found another town. Another nameless room in another nameless place. Paid in cash, no ID. That night, I sat outside on the concrete steps, staring up at a sky littered with stars, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Stillness. Real, deep stillness. No buzzing phone. No fake apologies. No second-guessing my own memory every time she rewrote a version of the truth. Just me. When you spend long enough with someone like her, you don't realize how small your world has gotten until you finally step outside of it. It's like living in a house full of gas leaks. You get used to breathing poison. I thought about all the times I had made excuses for her. All the times I let her weaponize my kindness. All the nights I stayed up wondering what I had done wrong, how I could fix it, how I could be better. And now, sitting there in the cold, under the endless sky, I understood the truth. I was never broken. I was just told I was. By someone who needed me to believe it so she could keep taking and taking and taking. The legal fallout would come for her, slow, brutal, inevitable. I didn't need to lift another finger. The truth had its own gravity. I wouldn't be there to see it. I wouldn't track her through court records or news articles. I wouldn't listen when mutual friends tried to gossip about what happened next. She was a ghost now. She could scream and claw at the walls of her self-made prison all she wanted. It didn't matter. I was already gone. And for the first time in years, I wasn't running from something. I was running toward something. Toward myself. If there's anything I would tell anyone reading this, anyone trapped under the heavy, invisible hand of someone who twists your heart and calls it love, it's this: you don't owe them your ruin. You don't owe them your silence. You don't owe them the best parts of you so they can hollow you out and wear your skin like a trophy. You owe yourself freedom. And the second you taste it, real, bone-deep freedom, you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. I stood up from those concrete steps, stretched out the stiffness in my arms, and smiled, a real smile this time, no bitterness clinging to it. Tomorrow I'd find a new town. A new place to disappear into. Not because I was hiding. Because I was finally ready to live. And she would spend the rest of her life learning the one thing she never believed. Some people don't come back. Some people walk away, and when they do, they take the light with them. Forever.